So a little story time. So how I got into whakairo. It all started back in Kura Kaupapa, which is kind of like primary school, Māori immersion primary school. And my dreams at the time were to be a zookeeper or work in the art department at Blizzard. This is when I just discovered Warcraft, by the way. And so, every Friday we would have these classes outside of our normal school curriculum, and whakairo was one of them, Māori wood carving. And so I took it up just because, it was my uncle. My uncle was teaching this class and I was curious. And so I went into this class with nothing, no expectations, pretty much just going into it out of curiosity. And then eventually, my uncle kind of sat us all down. We didn't touch a single tool on our first day, not one. And so what happened, he kind of taught us about where whakairo comes from. So whakairo, the art form, actually comes from one of our gods within our culture called Tangaro. Tangaro is the god of the sea, and he's also the god of Māori wood carving as well. He was the first god to create the first meeting house, or fully carved meeting house, called Hui Te Anganui was the name of this meeting house. And fast forward to the time of man, with Rua Te Pupuke and Manuruhi are their names, these two individuals. There are different variations of this story that are told amongst the tribes of the country as well. But I'll tell three. So basically it starts with them, in the time of man, they go fishing one day, and Rua Te Pupuke tells his son, make sure you do give the first fish back as an offering to Tangaro, because you're about to, take his children to sustain us. And so, as a young person, whoosh, straight over the head, and out in one ear, out the other. And eventually they started fishing Rua Te Pupuke. The dad was catching fish after fish. He gave his first one back, and the son was catching nothing. And so his son asked, "Can I use your fish hook to try and catch something?" And he goes, "Yeah, you may, but just make sure you give the first fish back." And once again, didn't listen. So he caught his first fish, and he was like, "Oh, okay." Caught another, and this got the attention of Tangaro. And so as he went to throw the line out one more time, as it landed in the water, went down, Tangaro grabbed it and pulled him down. So he pulled him into the sea as utu, or paying the price basically for what he had done. Thank you, Les Paul, and also Garniski. So yeah, that happened to him. Hours go by, the dad wonders, "Where's my son? It's been a while." So he goes back to that same spot, and he notices he's not there, and he's gone. Sees all the commotion going into the sea, and that's when he goes into the sea to go and look for him. And so, travelling through the sea looking for a sign of where he could find his son, until he sees something that looks a bit out of place at the bottom of the sea, and it was Hui Te Anganui, the name of that meeting house that I mentioned. And so he went down, swimming further and further, and as he got closer, he noticed a lot of movement at the apex of the meeting house. So with our meeting houses, they'll either have a carved face or a carved figure, or sometimes both as well. In the case of the story, it was Manuruhi. He was becoming a fully carved tiko, or three-dimensional carving. His tongue was poking out, his eyes were rolling back because he was losing air. And Rua Te Pupuke had to come up with a plan on how to save him. So what he did, he waited until the dead of night. He went back down, and he covered every entrance of this meeting house except the front door, because all Tangaroa's children took refuge in that meeting house in the night. And don't at me, this is what he did. He set that house on fire, and he stood out the front of the door waiting for Tangaroa's children to escape. And then eventually the first fish darts out, he slams it on the head so hard, we know it as the flounder today. The next one comes darting out of the meeting house. He breaks every bone in its limbs so they can't grow back. And we know that particular fish or cephalopod, whatever you want to call it, as the wheke or the octopus. And many other children of Tangaro escaped too. And then eventually he swam up to take his son off the meeting house. So he took him off. And as he was about to leave, he could hear voices in the meeting house as it was being engulfed by flames. And these two particular popo are mentioned throughout carving quite a lot. And their names are Wheri and Whera. So that's the name of these two particular carvings that were seen by human eyes that could speak. So unfortunately he wasn't successful because our carvings do not talk to us today. They could not teach us, so he took all the carvings from the outside of the meeting house back to the surface. And that's pretty much the main crux of the story that I was told from my uncle. Then later on told again by the master carver Clive Fugel at the carving school I went to. Other variations. Instead of his son being kidnapped, there was his pet tui. Now this is a variation that comes from my tribe of Tuhoi. So a tui is a native bell bird, and that was the same thing, except for being mounted onto the meeting house. Same thing, got taken, and you could hear it calling out in the sea. Rescued it the same way. And another variation from the coast is that instead of it being fully carved, it had patterns all along the front too. Are you Māori? Yes, I am, my friend. So that's pretty much the first story, or the first origin story of where whakairo came from. So the first one my uncle taught us. And then eventually, it piqued my interest. I was like, whoa, okay. And the things that kind of solidified it for me was the next parts he started talking about. So in our culture, there was a big thing that happened to us, with the world wars that went on. So there's that big generation gap we have in our history. But even before that, there was this act of parliament passed called the Tohunga Suppression Act that was passed by parliament back in the day, and that made everything in our culture illegal. Yeah, they try to outlaw us, But in saying that, because our people are a big fuck around and find out kind of people, thankfully today, from the likes of Sāpira Nanata and a few others, that we have this gift today of our language. Everything within our culture is still alive today, even from the speed bumps that we have in our history, right to the one that I mentioned before with the World War. So that big generation gap we had. A lot of the people that were supposed to teach the next generation didn't come back. So there was that kind of hurdle that our people had to get through as well. Luckily, not everyone went. Do you speak your language? Ai, kai te mōhio ki te kōrero Māori, koe nei taku reo tuatahi. Yes, I know how to speak te reo Māori. It's my first language that I ever learnt. Or heard when I was born. Hey, thank you for the disco ball, Brother Boyd. And yeah, when I heard that, so like even in my tribe too, one of our leaders said, don't go. Let them fight their own war, in kinder words. So a lot of our karaua back in Tuhoi didn't go, although some did go, in saying that too. I even have a great-great-grandfather by the name of Te Reiwhati Verko, who was too old to join the Māori battalion, but he was in the Boer War and a few others, but he ended up training the 28 Māori battalion as well. And so yeah, that was him. So those kind of things were the stories that sparked me up in my 12-year-old brain, like this is what I want to do. At the time I was pissed off, from what had happened to our people, because I never knew that. And then at the same time I got inspired to stop trying to pursue zookeeping and art department at Blizzard and fully just go into my culture. This was all at the age of 12. And then and I found my calling, and I've been in it ever since 12, and now I'm 34. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Like, I owe a lot to my uncle for doing that for me. That's why I take whakairo very seriously. I take his legacy very, very seriously too. Even more so now that he's gone. Like I always mentioned, the last conversation I had with him was at my wedding. We just sat down next to each other, just looking out in the distance, and he put his hand over me and he said, "I'm proud of you, my boy." And all good, uncle. It's always been for you. And yeah, that was unfortunately the last conversation I had with him. I take his legacy very seriously, while adding to my own as well. So yeah, that's pretty much the story of how I got into whakairo, Māori wood carving. I'll put it on YouTube later if you want to watch it. But yeah, pretty much I owe a lot to him. I owe a lot to him. Even my cousins used to say, you know, the carvers that he's taught and that are still carving today are more proud. We were more of the apple of his eye than his own kids. Watch your YouTube, it's just Broxh. And my other YouTube channel is Broxh Plays, but that's where I put gaming stuff. But yeah, for all the like carving stuff, I'm gonna put it on my main channel. I try and get 1 subscriber a day. So if you want to go through and subscribe to my channel, feel free to do so. Okay, let's get back to work, eh?